Hi everybody, and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. And back by popular demand, we have some Mama Bear stories, part 2 of the prequels. Also, if you're new to the channel or new to these stories, this is the third installment of these stories from OP. So maybe you'd also like to check out these 2 other videos. You'll find the links on the cards here or on the video description. Now let's begin. This post is from the subreddit Entitled Parents, and it's by user Craggle Tom. Drunk mother showed up to berate me in the middle of the night and vomited all over herself. This happened not long after I turned 15 and my mom had tried to send me to military school behind my father's back. We didn't know yet, but during this time my mother was having an affair with an old high school boyfriend of hers whom she'd somehow reconnected with. She'd claim she was going out to drinks with friends, but she really didn't have friends, save for a few co-workers she occasionally went out with. But they didn't really like her at all that much. My dad and I figured maybe she'd finally made some real friends because she actually got a bit nicer and was leaving me alone more. Whenever mom went out drinking with co-workers, she always took a cab to head out and then came back in one later so she wouldn't drink and drive. The cab server even knew her by name since she called every week. None of her co-workers really tolerated her enough to be her designated driver, so no one really got suspicious when she was using this routine more frequently to go meet her lover. One night, however, my mom came home pissed drunk and hobbled her way up to my room. I awoke to her pounding on my locked door at like 4 AM. She was punching and kicking it from the way it sounded. I opened the door to see her standing there looking disheveled, swaying back and forth and slurring her words. She called me a bad child for not doing as she says anymore, and that she wished she'd only had girls. I was understandably freaked out and told her to go away. It was about that time my dad showed up and this happened. The following is again paraphrased, and this happened a long time ago. Dad goes, "What in the hell is going on here in the middle of the damn night?" Mom goes, I was telling this little crap exactly what I think of him for disrespecting me. He's totally out of control. How much have you had to drink tonight? None of your effing business. You. Looks like she's thinking really hard for a second. Limp penis piece of fermented waste. I should have married the other guy. He's so much better than you. He treats me like a real woman. What other guy? Mom just then looked like she was gonna hurl and turned to go down the hall and headed towards the bathroom, but she only managed to hobble about halfway before projectile spewing her guts out all over the upstairs hallway. Then she fell over face first onto her own vomit and passed out. Dad was visibly disgusted, then asked me to help him get her to the bathroom so he could clean her up. But as we went to lift her, we noticed a smell quickly forming around us. My mother had actually soiled herself while lying in her own vomit. The smell of all that mixed together was horrendous, but we still had to carry her to the bathroom. My dad had me get a whole roll of paper towels and a garbage bag, then spent the next 45 minutes cleaning my mother up in the bathtub. He threw her clothes into the washing machine and then put my mom to bed. She woke up with a bad hangover the next morning, all the while not remembering anything she did or said, and was more embarrassed than I'd ever seen her when she found out. It wasn't me or my dad who told her. Nope, it was my sister. We were gonna try and spare her the finer details of what happened, but my sister blabbed the whole thing in front of her while she was nursing a coffee at the kitchen table. My dad took some time off work to call in a carpet service that same day. He had the hallway carpet ripped up and then the floor steamed clean before the new carpet was put down. My mother hid in her room the entire time because she didn't want to be seen. And she stayed clear of me for a while, but soon fell back into her usual habits. My dad got suspicious after my mom mentioned the other guy and got the call logs from the phone company for both the house phone and mom's cell phone. And what he found was enough for him to call a private investigator. My mom was outed as a cheater soon after because she really didn't cover her tracks well. And that's when my dad finally said he wanted a divorce. I wasn't there to see the argument when he called her out, but I was told it was the next level. She went crazy and threw stuff all over the kitchen. Broken dishes were everywhere. Yeah, guess who got to clean that up? Also, if anyone is wondering what happened to the guy my mom was having an affair with, my dad told me he actually applied for a transfer at his job and skipped town pretty fast. I have no idea where he went or where he is now, and from what I've heard, he didn't even contact my mom again. So yeah, she threw away her marriage for a short fling that meant nothing. Not that I care, I'm one of the few people who are actually happy their parents divorced. Ay, that mom. Anyways, no commentary needed, let's just move on to the next story. This post is from the subreddit Regular Revenge, and it's by user CraggleTom. Pranks I started as petty payback to my mom a long time ago. To start with, my mother has several irrational fears we never could explain. She hates and actively avoids things like garden gnomes and clowns, but the gnomes especially for some reason. If she were a vampire, they'd be a silver cross covered in garlic to her, and she's also pretty superstitious. At this time, Dad was staying in a motel because he outed Mom as a cheater, and then he filed for divorce. And my mother was not taking it well because he was also blackmailing her with a few forms of fraud she'd committed in his name, so her mental health at the time made her easily screwed with. My first weapon of choice was to find some garden gnomes. I hit pay dirt at a nearby garage sale a couple of streets over run by an elderly couple. They were retiring to Florida and selling just about everything. The lady liked gnomes, and she had a whole bunch from big to small. I bought all of them super cheap. Hell, they were nearly free when I explained what I was gonna do with them. My first act was to put the bigger gnomes in the yards of neighbors on either side and in front of our house. And yes, I did get their permission to put them there. They did and still do hate my mother. She'd threatened multiple neighbors with HOA violations, even though there hasn't been an HOA on the street since the early 90s. She even wanted to re-establish the HOA in 1999. But no one, not even my father, signed her petitions. So needless to say, I found it easy to find volunteers for my cause. She saw the gnomes in the morning when getting ready to leave for work. I was watching from my bedroom window and she looked noticeably uncomfortable as I'd aimed them all to stare right at her when standing by her car. The next place I targeted was my mom's work. I was acquainted with a co-worker of hers that absolutely despised my mother. Let's call this person Wendy. I talked to Wendy the previous day about my mom's gnome paranoia. Well, suddenly Wendy's desk and several others in the building were adorned with tiny gnomes that all were pointed to stare at my mom's workstation. Wendy even got a little gnome puppet to make jokes with in the office. Then, over the next few days, I went outside in the middle of the night and moved the gnomes in the neighbors' yards a bit closer each night. I had a few with angry faces painted on them that I mixed in, and they were holding pitchforks. Eventually, I placed several of them to look like they were rallying toward my mom's car. That made her start parking on the street to avoid looking at them. So I put one of the angry ones in the neighbor's backyard in such a way that its head was poking over the fence in view of the window in the master bedroom. I heard her freak out in the morning from seeing it, and then she knocked it down with a rake. Then, for a different prank, I got two random guys from my high school to carry a large mirror outside of my mom's work like they were moving it. I got the mirror at a garage sale too, and I paid the guys $10 each to intentionally bump into my mother in a way that they'd make her look like she was at fault the moment she was exiting the building. And one of them said, "Oh crap, lady, that's 7 years of bad luck." I watched from around the corner and the color drained from her face. It was priceless. I knew when she was coming out because Wendy called me on my cell to tell me the moment she was leaving the office, and I gave the two guys the signal to start moving. My mother ended up screaming at them and cussing them out, so they just booked it and were gone in a flash, and I hopped on my bike and beat her home by cutting through a back road. Thank you, bicycle engine. Next, there was a little person in town that worked part-time as part of a clown group for children's parties. I called his number from an ad and asked if he would do something for me. Best $40 I'd spent in a long time. My mom had just come home from work after the broken mirror incident, and as she is getting out of her car, there was a little man in a gnome costume riding a child's tricycle down the street and waving to her with a menacing grin. I tipped the guy an extra $5 for that performance. My mother ran into the house in a complete panic and actually called the police that there were gnomes out to get her. The police ended up doing a wellness check on her. Before long, my mother was complaining to the neighbors about the gnomes and threatening to call the HOA, but they all just reminded her that there hadn't been an HOA in years and there was no law against having the gnomes. Mom did not like that and went full crazy Karen. She took a claw hammer from Dad's tools and started destroying one of the gnomes with it. But the neighbors stopped her by threatening to call the police, and someone mentioned aloud that she shouldn't have hit the gnome because now they were really mad. That night, I took a whole bunch of the gnomes and set them up outside of the front door to look like an angry mob, and in front of the pack, I placed the gnome she'd attacked. Half its face was gone and I had to superglue part of its head back together, but it looked mean. And then, for good measure, I added a few spiders that were some old Halloween decorations from a neighbor in with the gnomes. They looked realistic enough to be creepy at first glance. I also added a plastic Smurf I found just to be funny. The resulting morning freakout was glorious. Mom refused to leave the house and wanted to call the cops again. I talked her down and said it was probably just a cruel prank by the neighbors. Then I moved all the gnomes and spiders out of the yard so she'd leave and go to work. She's a terrible driver when she's in a bad mood, so she sped off the moment she left the driveway, and there was a cop just down at the end of the street that pulled her over and ticketed her for speeding in a residential area. Apparently, he'd gotten an anonymous tip the previous day about a reckless driver from a payphone to wait down at the end of that particular street in the early morning. I wonder who did that. Smiley face. I stopped moving the big gnomes around and just left them poised in the neighbors' yards until I moved out to live with my dad. And one of the neighbors I kept in contact with said that the gnomes were all still there for years. In fact, it became a running gag in the neighborhood that keeping gnomes in your yard would keep my mother away. So a whole bunch of the neighbors got in on it and put them everywhere. Last I drove through the neighborhood over 2 months ago, there were still a good few of them around. I even put a few gnomes in my front yard after my mother broke several of my windows throwing rocks at my house. Wow, OP, you went all out on that one. But hey, there's still more. There's 2 more posts with pranks that OP pulled on his mom. So let's continue to the next one. After my mom got a ticket for speeding just after getting freaked out by more gnomes I'd placed in the middle of the night, I decided to mess with her using the gnomes one last time. I got some glow-in-the-dark paint from the local craft store and started painting the eyes of all the gnomes so they'd glow in the dark. Then I took some small gnomes and painted their eyes to glow as well. And I started putting them on trees in the yards of neighbors that were surrounding our house. They all gave me their permission to do this. It took me a while, but I managed to, little by little and over the course of a few days, string up a dozen little gnomes with glowing eyes in the backyard trees of all the neighbors whose backyards shared a fence with ours. My sister didn't even notice what I was doing because she was too busy playing video games or hanging out with her friends. When Friday rolled around, my mother liked to get drunk on the back patio and relax in quiet till dark. Well, that night my mother called me outside and said there were gnomes watching her. I played dumb and said they were just someone's idea of a joke and to not worry about it. But the darker it got, the brighter the eyes glowed. My mother finally had enough and came back into the house to curl up on the couch. But she started to get more paranoid, and as I'd hoped, she started peeking out the window on the front of the house and saw the eyes glowing on the gnomes in the neighbors' yards. And she flipped out, saying they were out to get her. Sadly, she got so wasted drinking that night that she forgot pretty much all of it the next day. And the next time it rained, the glow paint washed off the gnomes because it wasn't water resistant. But it all left my mother with an instinctive aversion to going out to the patio at night for a while. I figured I'd milked the gnome thing enough and started trying other little petty things. First, I took an old rusty nail I found on the side of the road and placed it at an angle underneath one of the rear tires of my mom's car so that as soon as the car backed up, the nail would go in it. This worked like a charm and my mom had a flat tire after work on Monday. She actually called me to ride my bike over and put on the donut spare for her. All the while I was reminding her how Dad said that her tires were pretty worn and she'd needed to replace them. But being a cheapskate, she always pushed that sort of thing till the last possible minute. But there was no avoiding it now. My mother had to go to the local tire place, and the old tires were so worn that they said she'd need to replace them all immediately, and had to do so. She got the cheapest tires, but it cost her at least $200 that day. The next thing I did to mess with my mother was I started signing up her email for random weird things. Think stuff as random as the Jelly of the Month Club or Wigs Anonymous for people without hair. Any little weird thing I can think of, I signed her up for one at a time, little by little. Mom used the same email password for years, and I saw her type it on a number of occasions and wrote it down. And I logged into her email from the public library so it wouldn't show up on the internet history of the family PC. She had quite the time dealing with all those emails. The next crazy thing I did was order a pizza. I sometimes did this because my mother hated cooking and my dad usually covered the cost of getting one. But this time I paid with my own money and asked to have it cooked and delivered at a specific time. An older brother of a friend of mine worked at the pizza restaurant and he thought it was hilarious when I explained to him what I was doing. I ordered a pizza for delivery topped with nothing but mushrooms, onions, green pepper, jalapenos, pineapple, and anchovies. When I was done ordering it, they named the pizza the Stinky. My mom and sister wouldn't touch anchovies with a 39.5-foot pole. My sister also hated mushrooms and any kind of peppers with a passion, and my mother couldn't stand pineapple on a pizza either. Admittedly, I wasn't a fan of eating this strange mix of toppings, but the looks on my mother's and sister's faces made it totally worth it. There was a ring of the doorbell at 6 p.m. and my mother answered the door. My mom said she didn't order a pizza, but the delivery guy said he had a medium pizza for me. My mom just groaned and let me pass by to collect it. I brought the pizza to the kitchen and was getting ready to open the box, and I knew exactly what my mother was going to do next. There was no way I could order a pizza without sharing it with my beloved sister, so mom called her into the kitchen to get some. The following is paraphrased from what I remember. Side note, there are 3 characters that I'm gonna need to read here, so bear with me with the voices. Daughter, OP got some pizza from you. Oh, sweet, pizza. Hey, I ordered this with my own money. It's mine. Now, you listen here, young man. You can't just go ordering pizza and expect not to share with your sister. Now, you're going to share. Fine, if she likes it, that is. Evil smile. I then opened the pizza box and they were greeted by my abomination of a pizza. The smell of the anchovies alone was enough to make them take a step back. Ugh, anchovies! You got anchovies? Me picking up a slice. Oh yeah, you want one? I point the slice towards her. She gags dramatically. No, get it away from me! Sister looking at the pizza. And he's got mushrooms and peppers on it too. I hate those. OP, that's disgusting. If you're going to eat that, then it's not gonna be in here. Take it outside. And I did. I took the pizza out onto the patio and ate it slowly while listening to 80s music on a portable radio and looking at all the little gnomes I'd hidden in the trees. That pizza tasted like complete satisfaction, though the nasty gas it gave me afterward made me think twice about ever ordering a Stinky again. OP, even though it might have been satisfying, that pizza sounds horrible. But apparently it helped you deal with your mom, so it must have tasted good to you. Now let's finish off this video with the last revenge OP took on his mom before moving out. This story happened over 15 years ago, just before I moved out of my mom's house during my parents' divorce. She'd been extra callous to me during that time and I wanted some payback. So I did several petty pranks on her and my sister around the house before I moved in with my dad. By this time, I was running out of ideas, though I had one in particular that I was saving for last. My mother, aside from her love of wine, also brewed a homemade alcoholic honey lemon iced tea that she just loved to guzzle, especially on Friday evenings after work. She kept a pitcher of it in the fridge that she refilled every so often, and the night she was so drunk she passed out in the hall and soiled herself gave me an idea. I went to a drugstore that was across town where nobody knew me and found a small bottle of potent liquid laxative that was odorless, tasteless, and mixed with any beverage. And I pretended to be very constipated at the register just for the sake of acting. When I got home, I carefully removed the same amount of iced tea from the pitcher and then poured the whole bottle of laxative into Mom's specialized tea, added a tiny bit more sugar, and stirred it up. From that point, all I had to do was wait. That evening, after Mom came home from work, she went to the fridge and poured herself a big and tall glass of her special home-brewed iced tea. She downed the first one pretty quick on the spot and then refilled it. Then she just sat watching TV on the sofa, which was white leather by the way. I watched as she started shuffling about and even heard a loud gurgling noise at one point. but she kept drinking the tea. I pretended to be concerned and asked if she was okay since she looked like she was sweating and couldn't sit still. Mom stubbornly played it off and then suddenly winced as one of the most horrid sounds I've ever heard came out of her backside. She screamed, "Oh God, no!" dropped what was left of the glass of tea and ran for the bathroom. She'd soiled herself so hard that some of it went through her clothes and onto the couch. My mom ran into the master bathroom and started wailing as she took the biggest dump of her life. If anyone here knows that bathroom scene from the movie Dumb and Dumber, it was a lot like that, crossed with a certain funny scene from the first Tak and the Power of Juju video game. Mom didn't come out of the bathroom for over 2 hours, and when she finally did, she was wearing her bathrobe because she'd just taken a shower. Her hair was a mess and she looked completely flushed. I'd cleaned up the mess she made on the couch, but she insisted on having the couch professionally cleaned, which was fine with me because that was her favorite spot to sit in the living room, and she refused to sit there till the couch was cleaned the way she'd wanted. But then, the funny thing is, she actually poured herself another glass of iced tea, and that wound her right back in the bathroom, and she even took the tea with her. She was literally feeding the fire. After that, she didn't come out again and had an absolutely miserable night. Thank God my dad was sleeping at a hotel because he was divorcing my mom. The master bathroom was connected to the master bedroom, and the smell downstairs had me and my sister gagging. The next day, Mom felt so bad that she called in to take leave from work for the next few days because her bowels were going crazy and she got no sleep. Just to be safe, I checked the pitcher to see how much tea was left and it was nearly gone, so I figured I was in the clear. But then here's the other crazy thing. The next day at school, my sister nearly soiled herself in class and had to run for the girls' bathroom, then asked to be sent home sick because of diarrhea. Apparently, she'd been sneaking some of Mom's specialized tea because it had alcohol in it, and smuggled what was left in the pitcher to school with her in a thermos. This clued my mom in that there was something wrong with the tea, and had me thoroughly wash the pitcher and throw away the various ingredients she used to make it, because she was afraid the pitcher or the tea ingredients were somehow contaminated. My sister also got in trouble for stealing alcohol. I'd almost never seen my mom chew out my sister for being bad, but this was one of those rare times. She said she was grounded and sent her up to her room crying, but of course she immediately forgave her the next day and just told her not to do it again. As far as I know, she didn't. I was smart enough not to dispose of the laxative bottle in the trash at our house or keep it in my room. I tossed it the same day I used it at a random trash can while out riding my bike. I told my father years later that I was the one responsible for what happened back then, and he started cackling. He said I shouldn't have done it, but it was just too funny not to laugh. My sister also knows about what I did now, as I told her before writing this story. She said she doesn't care because it was a long time ago and taught her a lesson not to try and steal booze anyway. My mother still doesn't know it was me, and I and my sister don't plan on ever telling her. Wow, OP, you really took some big hits at your mom, but I have to say, they were all well deserved. Thanks for sharing, OP. Now, OP has a lot more stories that we could fit into the prequel saga, so just let me know in the comments section if you'd like me to read those. And it's that time that we've reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I really did enjoy reading them to you. So if you did, then don't be shy and go ahead and give the video a like. And don't forget to subscribe or even share this video with people that you might think will enjoy my storytelling. Also, if you have the time, go down to the video description and check out all the links I have for you, from our Discord community to my channel merch. And finally, I'd like to say thank you for watching. It really means a lot to me that you enjoy my videos. And having said all that, I'll see you guys in the next video.